because we've got great examples in galleries of paintings which have lasted hundreds of years, and we know how those guys made their paints, we've, if you like, all the test and research has already been done way before my time. So yes, we do know how to make a paint last, so that's what I've replicated here. So it's a concentrate. Now the great thing about being a concentrate, it means that the impact to the eye, which is what we see here, that visual impact is greater, because when you have, if you were able to see the paint under a microscope, you'd notice in my paint that all my pigment particles, because there's no fillers or extenders, all those individual particles are all tightly grouped up against each other like a row of soldiers. So there's greater, if you like, protection that they offer to one another, because when UV light, which is responsible for breaking down the colour, comes and hits that paint surface, because you've now got more pigment particles, it means that there's less UV light penetrating that surface through and causing the breakdown. And even if you've got a very permanent pigment like, say, cadmium, if you take those pigment particles further apart, it means the UV light will still get to it and break it down more, the more diluted it is. So with mine being a concentrate, it will resist the UV light for that much greater, and it also means that the zing your eye gets, so think of it this way, light comes in through the window, bounces off the paint surface here, comes back up to the optic nerve and goes ping, you know, bright green, you know, pure, like, never seen a bright green like that before, how did that work? Which is of course what I said when I started my paintings in my studio, and friends would come in and go, how's he getting that colour so bright? That's what's going on there, because think of it this way, supposing I was a musician sitting in front of me with a musical instrument, and I decided to pluck a string, I go, it's a harp, you know, ping, and it's middle C, and of course that sound travels to your ears and then into your message is sent to the brain, and it's uninterrupted sound because we're only a few feet away. But if you listen, got a machine working out over there, bit of music playing over there. There's background sound, which is rather like the way that light can be disturbed by if the paint's diluted, so that the eye, the optic nerve, gets less, if you like, the message it sends to the part of the brain that deals with the colour, the cerebellum. That's the bit that processes all the sort of the messages, if you like, makes order of them. The message it sends to the cerebellum is like maximum bright green. Get it, bing, 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 like that loop. That's the message that the brain receives, and that's why we interpret what we see there as that bright, vivid green, and that's why it happens.
It's another one of our philosophies, though, is that because the paint is a concentrate and the color is strong, it's powerful, it's better to acquire paints that are powerful and use your titanium dioxides and whites to change or soften the color if you're used to a softer color. You can't buy paints that are soft or dull and make them bright.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, we always try and tell people, because we've had a couple of painters who are very well known say, I love your paints, I wish I could use them, but I only paint in pastel colors. And we say, use our titanium dioxide. You have to, you know, just put that little bit of paint in and you get that same rich, vibrant color, or same soft, muted color. It's the other way around when you're working with paints and you can't get them to do what a paint without fillers does, you know, when it's got that.
Paint would go further that way, right?
Of course, it goes about 3 times as far.
We've
Sometimes I'm
analyzed, cheaper
than my competition.
We had one guy who is out of San Francisco, well, not one guy, but one of the guys out of San Francisco who regularly shows up to our demonstrations, and when he walks away at the end of a demo, he takes what's ever left on the paper. And he comes back the next time we're in town, and he shows how he took that paint and painted a whole painting. Because he said...
Being a concentrate just goes so far.
And we don't pay him or anything.
Realize that already, even if you get a bit on your hands.
But we put a lot of lapis and things out, and people will take it away, and they can paint with it, because that's the coverage power.
Yeah.
Generally, you can get out of a 40 mil tube at least 60 mils of paint.
Oh,
so you
can't say it like that. In terms of the coverage, it would be as normal as a normal 60 mil.
As a normal, at least.
It's not as if I've got 60 mil into a 40 mil tube compressed.
No, but compared to...
In terms of the covering power, at least,
At least,
yeah. But I mean, in terms of what's other things, I mean, you heard my philosophy when I started. I want to give you guys an opportunity. You could either paint in a very vivid and almost modern way, or you can paint in a very old-fashioned way. I give you the choice. Because I want to just put a tool in your hand, so you've got the opportunity to decide what you want to do with it. But my starting point is, you know, if I was making sculpture tools, I'd put a nice sharp chisel in your hand and you think, oh, this feels so good. And the way it glides through that wood is oh, this is great. That's what I want to do with paint. You're doing the hard bit, because the hard bit takes place in there, doesn't it? Of deciding, when you make a statement, is that the right statement, and what's in your mind's eye to get that statement out. So intellectually, you're doing the hard part. I'm just a tool maker. That's how I look at it. But anyway, things that are unusual in the range, as I say, I like to be providing some of the stuff that the old guys would have recognised. Like this is genuine lapis lazuli, which comes from Afghanistan. And I've got some in the car as pigment I forgot to bring in, but we can, if someone wants to see it, we can go and grab it. But, so I import this from Afghanistan as a dry pigment. I then combine it with linseed oil and grind it on a small triple roll mill, which is the traditional way of getting, if you like, the dispersion, the uniform wetting of every pigment particle. Now, the key thing about this is, and I'll start here, I've demonstrated a bit here, it's a very subtle blue. It's not, if I compare it next to modern ultramarine, which of course as you can see has got a lot more zing to it.
What was the other one?
This is
What was this one?
that's modern ultramarine blue. This is lapis lazuli. So you see, the modern ultramarine blue is the synthetic version of the lapis lazuli. This was so expensive in the Renaissance that it was valued at more than gold. And when paintings were commissioned, if you were a very wealthy merchant or royalty, you'd always show the world how much money you had and have lots of blue in your painting. And usually religious figures were, Christ or the Madonna would always be depicted generally wearing blue as well, just because of the significance of the consequence of it being so sought after. But I mean, considering that's, if you like, one of nature's gifts, that's, I mean, all right, we've all seen gemstones like sapphires, which are a very vivid blue. The thing I love about it, it's so gentle and subtle, and I always demonstrate it alongside terre verte because, again, this is natural earth. And the two of them have got very low tint power. I mean, you know, I can put paint in the back of my hand there and go like that, and it's virtually gone. It's because it's got very, very low tint power. It's all made in the same criteria that I've got nothing but pigment and oil in there, and just a little bit of wet to stop separation. But if I'd start to do that with the modern ultramarine blue, you notice I don't get away with it because its tint power is that much greater. But the interesting thing about the terre verte and ultramarine is that they have this. Yeah, sorry, terre verte and lapis, thank you. Is that because they're natural earths, they have a relationship almost like a sort of symbiosis. They're sort of like cousins. So you see that when you start combining those together, they have a relationship. It's like the musical instruments from the same orchestra. It's not like I put an electric guitar next to a harpsichord or something, yeah, a violin. They have a relationship, and I mean, if you're up in Seattle, and you know, you're a landscaper, then you've got, that's rainy day Seattle straight away, isn't it? Because there's a sort of relationship with them, and I can put other natural earths like yes, burnt sienna is obviously Italian. And again, this is a, when you have natural earths, they tend to have a fairly large pigment particle. You can actually feel the granularity, and that's why they don't have that same tint power. When you've got a very high tint colour, like say a phthalocyanine green, which the pigment particle is microscopic, and it has huge power. But again, this will also have a relationship. So if you're a, you know, if you're a landscaper, plein air guy, you can immediately start. You know, painting's a very hard thing to do, actually, isn't it? I think we'd all agree. I always say to people, don't stack the odds against yourself. You know, work with colours that one you like, and it would be very logical in some ways for you to sort of go and choose colours from a palette that you don't like, because you could constantly be fighting them. You actually have to like. If you like and enjoy a colour, you're invariably going to produce a much better painting for it. So you see these colours immediately, and even within there, you can see that there's always something going on there within it. Lots of artists have experienced that normally if you paint with say 4 or 5 colours from a range, it normally becomes this muddy gulf. And I will guarantee that when you paint with mine, and I think you've probably already found this, that it's very difficult to get gunk out of my colours. Even if you put 7 or 8 or 10 colours together, there's still something going on within it. But anyway, so I like to do things like the genuine lapis lazuli. I also produce, I've got to just start cleaning myself a bit, otherwise it's going to be chaos there.
And they have me daring there with a white shirt.
Can I have a towel?